Journeys of Return and Redemption, Zechariah chapter 2. The recording room stays quiet as the digital level meters settle on the main dashboard, their amber lights bouncing softly in sync with the room's steady insulation. Alex adjusts his headphone band, leaning toward the condenser microphone while sliding his open copy of the post-exilic scrolls to the center of the desk. "Welcome back to Journeys of Return and Redemption," Alex says, his voice carrying a warm, measured resonance that establishes the session's focus. Today we cross the threshold into Zechariah chapter 2, a text that completely shatters how we measure security, growth, and survival. We are tracking the third night vision, a man walking out with a measuring line to map the dimensions of a ruined city. But before a single stake can be driven into the dirt, the entire project is interrupted by an administrative command from heaven that changes the blueprint. To understand the sheer shock of this vision for a group of exhausted refugees trying to rebuild their lives on a pile of stones, we have to cross-reference a massive semantic link hiding over in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. Dr. Naomi, map out this coordinate for us. Dr. Naomi slides her notebook forward, her finger tracing a highlighted line of Hebrew script. The entire architectural disruption hinges on verse 4, where an angel runs out to intercept the surveyor and declares, "Jerusalem shall be inhabited as towns without walls, because of the multitude of men and livestock in it." The specific word used here for unwalled villages is perazot. For a first-century or post-exilic reader, living as perazot was an absolute nightmare scenario. It meant complete, naked vulnerability. If you don't have stone battlements, iron bars, and heavy gates, you aren't a city. You are targets for every wandering raider in the Near East. And this is exactly where the scroll of Ezekiel drops its shadow. In Ezekiel 38, verse 11, the hostile forces of Gog look at the landscape of restoration and say, "I will go up against a land of unwalled villages, perazot. I will go to a peaceful people who dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls." In Ezekiel's framework, this lack of fortification is a calculated tactical lure. God deliberately leaves the community open to draw out the hidden, predatory pride of the global superpowers, setting them up for an event-driven cosmic liquidation on the mountains. The absence of masonry is the bait for a trap. Rabbi Jonah nods, leaning into his microphone to pick up the thematic thread without breaking the paragraph's analytical focus. Exactly, Naomi, but see how Zechariah completely redeems that template. In Zechariah 2, the unwalled condition is no longer a tactical trap or a military liability. It has become a demographic and administrative necessity. The text reveals that the kinetic velocity of the restoration is going to be so explosive that human masonry simply cannot contain it. The population of human beings and livestock is going to rupture any artificial physical perimeter you try to construct. If you build a stone wall around Jerusalem, you are trying to trap an ocean inside a bucket. So the old establishment's definition of safety is discarded because the town is too large to fit into conventional human systems. But that leaves the immediate human question of protection. Thomas cuts in, his voice grounded in practical reality. "As a father, if you tell me my family has to live in an open field with no locks or perimeter, my defensive instincts kick into overdrive. You can't just tell people to expand boundlessly without addressing the raw threat of hostile counterforces. That's why verse 5 is the structural turning point of the vision. For I, says Yahweh, will be a wall of fire all around her, and I will be the glory in her midst." God doesn't leave them exposed. He substitutes static, vulnerable, quarried rock with a dynamic, active element. Chomat Esh, a permanent ring of divine fire. In Ezekiel 38 and 39, we see the raw, catastrophic result of what happens when an invading army actually collides with that invisible perimeter. Gog sees an unwalled village and assumes it's an easy mark, completely unaware that the absence of physical stone is an indicator of a much higher, active energy weaponized around the border. Ezekiel documents the fire and brimstone raining down to incinerate the invaders, which is the literal manifestation of Zechariah's wall of fire activating under siege. Sophia leans forward, her expression shifting the dialogue toward the interior weight of the vision. Think about the psychological transition that requires from the people on the ground. For 16 years, they had been hiding behind excuses, stalled by fear and surrounding opposition. It is so easy for us to build internal stone walls, rigid, self-protective habits designed to keep our lives small, manageable, and safe from hurt. We limit our own growth because we are terrified of exposure. But Jesus looks at our small calculations and says, "Let it overflow." He calls us to live in open, vulnerable dependency on His presence, changing our defensive paradigm from human locks to a daily, active trust in His protective ring of fire. The heavy, manifest glory, the kavod that Ezekiel watched depart from the corrupted temple, is reinstalled right in the open center of the community's daily life, proving that true security is never about the strength of our defensive walls, but the presence of the inhabitant inside. Father Elias raises his eyes from his commentary, anchoring the system back to its cosmic fulfillment. This structural transposition is the very heart of New Covenant reality. In the ancient world, you had to travel inside a guarded temple enclosure to get near the presence. But in Christ, the boundaries are completely blown open. The church expands as an unwalled international family, gathering individuals from every nation under heaven, just as Zechariah predicts in verse 11. Anyone who attempts to exploit or harm this community is warned by the text that they are poking a finger directly into the apple of God's eye, Babat Ino. The universal command at the close of the vision for all flesh to be silent is the legal notice that the sovereign Creator has roused himself from his holy habitation to enforce this boundary line personally. As Alex prepares to close the podcast, he leans toward his microphone and says, "I'm Alex Rivera, and this has been Journeys of Return and Redemption."